Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for your patience in being here today to hear some of the answers from Boeing. Thank you, those of you who are in the audience, and condolences to your families, as well as to those, I guess, and others in the airline industry who are really looking very closely at what we all have here to say. Mr. Mullenberg, I wanted to ask you some questions, particularly about MCAS. Following the Lion Air Flight 610 accident last year, Boeing issued a bulletin for the 737 MAX. The subject concerned, quote, uncommanded nose down stability trim due to erroneous angle of attack, AOA, during manual flight. While this bulletin describes in detail what can occur during an AOA failure, including nose down trim in increments lasting up to 10 seconds, and that, quote, repetitive cycles continue to occur unless the stabilizer trim systems is devacuated. I note that not once does the bulletin mention by name what in fact causes such a nose down command, which is MCAS. And I have a copy of a Boeing Flight Crew Operations Manual, bulletin number TBC-19, page 51. I would ask that this be entered into the record. Thank you. Sir, why was MCAS not mentioned in the November 6th bulletin?
Congresswoman, I'm going to ask John to add to this one, but it's what we were attempting to do with that bulletin was to, again, remind pilots of that existing emergency procedure around runway stabilizer, and the reference to multiple inputs is the behavior that you would expect the airplane to see as a result of MCAS. So the idea is, again, provide the pilots information about the behavior of the airplane as opposed to diagnosing the specific system. So that was the intent.
So the intent was which one?
The intent was to inform them of the failure mode that MCAS could cause,
okay,
rather than try to provide details on MCAS. Since then, again, feedback from the pilots, we know we need to provide more information on MCAS itself in addition to the effects of MCAS. And that's part of the update we're making to the training manuals.
In providing the effects of MCAS, would it have been easier or to summarize it by using the term MCAS?
It perhaps could have. I think that's one of the things we've learned now is the pilots would like to have additional information on just the definition of MCAS itself, in addition to the effects of its failure modes. Again, our goal is to optimize what's in the training manual so we don't add more information than what's useful for the pilots.
How large are your training manuals?
We could have done better here.
How large are the training manuals?
I can't comment on that. I don't know,
They're
John,
pretty substantive, aren't they?
They're very substantive. Yeah.
So why would that have been any more of a difference to add that? I saw you nodding your head, sir. Did you want to add anything?
Well, they are very substantial in size, but we do go through a process of trying to evaluate what's the right information, right level of information to be in there. We can incorporate all kinds of information. In hindsight, you know, and in response to the pilot's request, we are going to put the material in the training manuals on MCAS. We're going to tell them exactly what they need. We're going to have a lot more information in there to address this.
So is that the decision as to why it was ultimately excluded? Because it was seen as what? Not something that the pilots would have?
Again, our intent was to provide information on how to fly the airplane, not necessarily diagnose the system failures, and that's always a balance that we try to get in our training materials. And clearly here, we need to provide more information for the pilots.
So the reference to MCAS was excluded, was the reference to MCAS excluded in order to not bring attention to the system pilots? We're unaware about it? No?
Congresswoman, the intent was to provide the training materials that the pilots would need to fly the airplane rather than try to educate them on the system details. And again, that's an area where we fell short and we need to provide additional information. And we're going to.
So in that same bulletin, just very quickly, Boeing describes how erroneous AOI can cause potentially many indications and as many as 4 different alerts or lights. IS disagree, ALT disagree, etc. Do you believe if several of these indications went off simultaneously in a cockpit, a pilot would be confused about how to respond?
So, Congresswoman, when you have an AOA in the case of Lion Air, where it was miscalibrated, once it got to a certain threshold, and you had a difference in altitude, then it would trigger that altitude disagree. When it got to a certain airspeed disagree, then, so they may not come all on at the same time, but they are probably fairly closely linked together on that.
Okay, so the question was, would a pilot be confused on how to respond? And then I yield back.
Yeah, so the OMB was really about, if you have an AOA issue, it can trigger a number of different indications in the flight deck and to help you identify what could be going on. And if you have the stabilizer moving, then perform the runaway stabilizer procedure. We subsequently went out at the request of our customers with a detailed message about MCAS and explained what it was.
Mr. Carvajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to start by also offering my condolences to the families